Hello, good evening, everyone. We would like to formally welcome you to our Jonas Scholar Leadership Panel, Empowering Leadership from Within. The focus of Jonas is to improve healthcare through targeted investments in high potential doctoral nursing students pursuing PhD, EDD, or DNP degrees whose research and clinical foci specifically address our nation's most pressing healthcare needs. There are 3 Jonas Scholars currently attending the University of Colorado Entrance Medical Campus. Amy Kurst is a PhD candidate, and Damon Tolchkalowski and myself, Shika Adams, are both DNP candidates with an anticipated graduation date of December 2023. Mr. Tolchkalowski will take it from here. We would just like everyone to know that the session is currently being recorded.
Thank you, Shika. Would just like to take a moment to welcome any past Jonas Scholars. It looks like Alexandra Michelle is a fellow Jonas Scholar, so welcome. And if anybody else is here that's a fellow Jonas Scholar, just raise your hand and I'll be happy to acknowledge you. So just an honor and privilege to have Dr. Clavell with us here tonight, being a former student of hers, and it was just a real big honor for her to agree to come and talk to us tonight. So a little bit about her. So Dr. Joanne T. Clavell, DNP, RN, NEA, BC, FACHE, FAAN, is currently Chief Executive Officer of Clavell Consulting based in Denver, Colorado, and is an assistant professor at the University of Colorado of Nursing. Prior to this, Dr. Clavell served as a regional vice president and chief of nursing officer for the West Get Well Network, which is an interactive patient care technology company, providing clinical collaboration and advertisement to senior leadership of nursing teams in over 50 hospitals and healthcare systems in the Western United States. For 9 years prior to this, Dr. Clavell served as the chief nursing officer in several health systems, most recently as the senior vice president and chief clinical officer for Scottsdale Healthcare and later Honor Health, responsible for nursing oversight for over 3,400 nurses at its 5 magnet designated hospitals in both Scottsdale and Phoenix, Arizona. Holy cow. Dr. Clavell also served as vice president for patient care services and chief nursing officer for St. Luke's Healthcare System in Treasure Valley in Boise, Idaho, a 5-time designated ANCC magnet organization, vice president of ancillary services at the University of Vermont Medical Center, and 7 years with the VHA Incorporated in clinical and community health leadership roles, working with over 60 hospitals in 7 states across the northwestern United States. In this role, Dr. Clavell contributed to creating national community benefit guidelines in collaboration with Catholic health associations, which stemmed from her earlier work in catalyzing the creation of a Healthy Cities Initiative, the Champlain Initiative in Burlington, Vermont, addressing the community's economic security and environmental health, leading to improved care access, sustainable growth, community fitness, and employer collaboratives. Her model to transform and expand privileges for APRNs working in collaboration with the medical staff and healthcare organizations has been widely disseminated. Dr. Clavell has an AD in nursing from the University of Vermont and a BSN from Vermont College of Norwich University, and an MS in community health from administrations and wellness from California College of Health Services, and a doctorate in nursing practice from Case Western University, Francis Payne Bolton School of Nursing. Dr. Clavell recently completed a 4-year term at the Director at Large of the Sigma Theta Tau STTI International Society, and has served as chair for the STTI Clinical Advisor Committee, Educational Board for General Nursing Administration and Healthcare Executive, Board of Directors of Cancer Support Community Phoenix, Advisory Committee of the American Nurses Association Barriers to RN Scope of Practice Issues Panel, and Premier Clinical Strategic Advisory Council. She is a member of SIGMA, the American Nurses Association, American Organization of Nurse Executives, Colorado Nurses Association, and is a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives, board certified in healthcare administration, and is certified in nursing administration, advanced by the American Nurses Credentialing Center. Dr. Clavell was inducted into the American Academy of Nursing in 2019. She has received several recognitions, including Arizona Top Women in Business recognition for the Arizona Republic in 2015 and the Tribute to Women in Industry TWIN Award from Women's and Children's Alliance in Boise, Ohio in 2010. Dr. Clavell is a well-known writer, presenter, research instructor in several peer-reviewed professional journals and presents at state, national, and interventional conferences on transformational leadership, structural empowerment, professional governance, nurse practitioner, physician collaborative practices, the impact of technology in transforming nursing practice, and other topics. For the past 10 years, Dr. Clavell has been working with nationally recognized research teams, developing a conceptual model on professional governance in organizations and corollary measures instrument, the Varon Professional Governance Scale. So with great privilege, I introduce you to Dr. Clavell, having been a student of hers and help guide my not only writing and just leadership path. It's just been such an honor to be a student of hers. And I'd just like to take a quick moment to see if you have any other thoughts or additions you'd like to make, Dr. Clavell.
Well, I think that was very comprehensive. You actually read like my entire CV, I think. It does reflect that I've been a nurse for it'll be 46 years this May. So I've had a really very long, wonderful, rewarding career. I have had the opportunity to do a lot of things, and I'm still nursing. I'm still really very much enjoying it. So no, I thank you, Damon. That was really great.
So how tonight's going to work is we'll be doing kind of a round table question. So there's going to be about 8 questions between Sheikah, Amy, and myself for Dr. Clavell. If there's time at the end and there's other questions that you'd like to ask of Dr. Clavell, please raise your hand or put it in the chat. We'll do our best to moderate and we'll go forth with the questions. So I'll read the first one here. For Dr. Clavell, thinking back to your first job as a young RN, can you recall a moment with a mentor that continues to resonate with you to this day? A moment, a phrase, a mantra that you continue to employ in your professional scope of executive nursing?
Well, it was really interesting because I haven't thought about my first RN job in a very, very, very long time. So really just taking the time to think about that. I grew up in Vermont and I went to the University of Vermont. And my first job was in Washington, D.C. in the Northeast District. For any of you that are familiar with D.C., it's a pretty rough part of the city. And I was actually the charge nurse of the CCU. So that was my very first job. I had been an EKG tech when I was 16. I actually put myself through nursing school, working every weekend as an EKG tech. And I ended up working in the CCU as a charge nurse on the evening shift. My very first mentor was Pilar Valandria. She was from the Philippines. In fact, I was the only American-born nurse on my unit at the time. This was in 1977. Pilar was an amazingly energetic woman, and she did teach me a lot of things. But I think one of the things that she taught me from the very start was just do it. Just do it, leap in. If you don't understand how to do something, ask questions, be inquisitive, make sure that you learn new things. And I'll never forget when she actually handed me the IV tray and said, you go start IV bed 6. And that's exactly how she used to talk. You go start IV bed 6. And I was like, well, Pilar, I'm not sure that I'm ready to do that yet. She goes, yes, you go do it. And I did. And it was fine. It worked out just fine. I had obviously observed IVs before, but wasn't a formal competency at that time. And so that was one of the things that she taught me. Another thing that she taught me was nursing as a profession, really having autonomy and how to really work collaboratively with physicians. I think that's something that has continued to stay with me my entire career. Physicians often run organizations, or they're often in leadership roles. Nursing sometimes reports to physicians. And I think that one of the things that she taught me was that establishing positive relationships with physicians. In fact, this hospital was called Doctors Hospital. It was owned by physicians. It was a private hospital. And she taught me very quickly that very important to establish relationships, to establish trust, to be able to have good communication, to be able to establish good rapport with understanding where the patient was at. And so that was something that has stayed with me my entire career. And the last thing was really around building positive relationships with colleagues. So I mentioned I was the only American-born nurse. There were a lot of nurses from the Philippines as well as India and Korea. And very frequently we would get together outside of work and have celebrations. We got to know each other's families. We were a very close-knit group in the sense that she really believed that it wasn't just work, it was family. It was really, these people you're in a relationship, you really need to learn about them, understand what's important to them. And again, that's something that has stayed with me throughout my career.
Excellent. It kind of resonates too with military, where you planted somewhere, you grow where you bloom. So you find
Yeah.
that family connection. Even as a military nurse, I did that for 20 years. So it's kind of neat to see that even outside of a military kind of network. So
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah.
Question two: as experienced nurses retire, how should nursing deal with the loss of skill and knowledge they take with them?
Boy, that's really tough, isn't it? There's just a tremendous amount of turnover right now with experienced nurses. And I think that if you look back, I mean, I've been a nurse for 46 years. It really wasn't unusual for nurses to be in the same organization for 30, 40 years. And, with all of their knowledge, and that's really changed. The landscape has really changed. People don't stay in that one position as long as they have. And also you're seeing a tremendous wave of retirement, as, baby boomers are retiring, but also people are leaving nursing, as we know. And so there is really that loss, if you will. And I think it's very difficult to deal with that. I do think that there's a couple of things that are really critical. One is being involved in your professional organization and really making a conscious effort to keep current on evidence-based practice, on your specialty area, making sure that you read, making sure that you network. It's not all about necessarily working with someone who can mentor you. Sometimes you have to really mentor yourself, and you have to be self-motivated and be able to find that information and find those networks. That being said, I do think it's really important to think about having a mentor. And a mentor is not necessarily someone who is in your immediate work area. I have always had mentors in my life. I continue to mentor and be mentored. Even at this phase of my career, I think it's very, very important to make sure that you have connections and that you're able to ask the questions and seek clarity that you need to really be able to do an exemplary job in your practice. I think that can be really difficult with all of this turnover. So I don't think there's an easy fix to the loss of so much knowledge and experience in the nursing workforce today. But I do think that nurses are going to have to really be able to seek the clarity that they need, not be afraid to ask the questions that they need so that they can deliver exemplary care, and really understand that creating an effective nursing work environment is probably the most effective thing that can be done to really promote high quality care. So being able to step up maybe when others are leaving to fill a void, even though you may not know exactly how to do it, but just not being afraid to just step in and to, try to learn as much as you can. So I think that's a very difficult, the loss of skills and knowledge and the turnover that's happening today. I think that's a very significant challenge. And I don't think there's just one answer to that.
Great. Next question. What strategies, either observed or implemented, have been effective in creating a thriving nursing culture?
Well, you probably know, just reading some of my work, is that this is probably something that I'm most passionate about. Creating an empowering work culture is really, I think, the key to professional growth. It's the key to, assuring that patients and families and communities are going to receive exemplary care. And so I think that as a leader, I think there's many, many tactics that I could talk about. The first that I think is very important is to make sure that we're advocating for and succeeding in achieving safe staffing standards. I think that's one of the most critical things, making sure that we have care models, care delivery models that are able to accommodate the needs of patients and families when we're in a shortage situation. I think that being able to have a positive relationship with the chief financial officer and the senior level executive team in being able to clearly articulate the staffing that you need to take care of those patients, or else you do not take care of them. So I think being very strong and very assertive in understanding the impact of staffing, safe staffing, and I'm talking, cross continuum care, not just inpatient hospital care. I think that this really pertains across the board. So I think that's a strategy that is very important to be the advocate, but also to be able to work effectively with senior leadership and articulate it clearly what it is that you need and be successful at it. I've had a lot of experience with that. So that's I think an effective strategy. I think that establishing an environment for professional governance is critical. Making sure that nurses have a voice no matter where they are, and being able to address nursing practice, nursing quality, nursing education, leadership, growth and development, lifelong learning, and being able to have the structures and processes in place to do that. It's really a very challenging thing, because you need to allocate hours and time within an organization to be able to do that effectively. And so what a lot of executives like to call that is non-productive time. So there's productive time where you're doing direct care, and then there's indirect, non-productive time. And again, being able to successfully advocate for having that time, I think, is really important, so that nurses can deliberate, they can review the latest evidence, they can bring up some of the challenges that they're having. Nurses have a tremendous amount of autonomy, and being able to create an environment where they're able to make those kinds of decisions, I think it's probably the most rewarding thing about being a leader, is really enabling others to act. And so professional governance structures, I think, are really critical. Also, just that engagement in decision-making, in making sure that nurses feel empowered to make decisions so that things aren't happening to them, they're actually involved. Again, that's a strategy that I've used many, many times, and it's very, very rewarding, and frankly, it's very insightful. If you really want to have, be in touch with the nursing workforce and make decisions that are going to be supported in a positive way, you really have to understand what is important to the nurses, and trying to really help support the decisions that they are making. Also, I think that another aspect, I know I'm going on and on, but this is like my best, this is my hot topic. Taking the time to listen, I think, is probably one of the key strategies. Really being in touch with what's happening in the work environment, listening to what some of the challenges are, rewarding and recognizing what some of the successes are. One of the strategies that I utilized as a chief nursing officer was Java with Joanne. So we used to have coffee hours, and of course it's 24/7. So in the middle of the night, first thing in the morning, late in the evening, you have to really meet the staff where they are. And so being fully present, engaging in roundtables, I can't tell you how many times I really got such new insights and came up with new ideas, and nurses really felt respected and listened to. And I think that that's so critical, so incredibly critical, and so simple, right? To have a little coffee hour with staff, but again, being visible, caring, listening, and then being able to follow up. I think that was another area. I think I mentioned, rewarding and recognizing individuals and teams for exemplary performance. when nurses align their professional practice and behaviors with that of the organization, I mean, that's a powerful thing. And being able to leverage that and reinforce that behavior is another strategy that I used quite a bit. Also assuring and advocating for competitive salary and benefits. Is particularly today, it's even more challenging, I think, with a tremendous shift to travelers and very high cost models of care. It's very difficult to retain nurses when there's, such a threat in terms of the competition, and being able to look at working for a staffing agency, picking the hours that you may want to work, and not working when you don't want to work. I mean, there's a lot more flexibility, I guess I would say, in how nurses are doing that, and being able to assure that you're able to provide competitive salary and benefits and attract and retain nurses is another strategy to create an empowering workforce. And then finally, I think just building positive relationships, positive relationships everywhere. The executive team, frontline staff, housekeeping, other, everyone has to work together as a team to achieve. So I think all of those strategies just were top of mind to me in building an effective workforce, empowered workforce.
Wow, thank you. Dr. Clavell, can you think of a situation with a fellow executive professional, and this can be within any specialty, that forced you to collaborate outside of your institution to problem solve?
Sure. So I was a magnet CNO for over 10 years. And those of you that are familiar with Magnet know that there's new knowledge, innovation, and improvement and research, and that you really have to have a solid research foundation. And it's very difficult for some organizations to really establish that, where nurses are actively involved in practice-focused research. And so looking at the sources of evidence and looking at where we needed to go to really raise the bar on nursing research was very challenging. And one of the things that I did was create a practice academic partnership with the local university. This was in Boise, Idaho, where we developed a collaborative effort where faculty and professors at the university were able to actually have part-time appointment at the hospital, at the health system, to be able to mentor and pair up with clinicians to be able to design a study, to submit their IRB applications, or it could just have been a quality improvement project. But it became a win-win because the nurses were able to be coached and mentored and publish and have exemplary projects. But also, as most of you know, faculty need to publish. So it was a win-win because, and also they had an appointment as a research mentor at the healthcare system. And that was also very prestigious for them to be able to not only be in the classroom, but also to be in the practice setting. And so bridging that gap really occurred through my relationship with the dean. So I think that's one example of collaborating outside the institution. I think that you heard about my work on transforming privileges for nurse practitioners. That is an area that I've been very, very passionate with for a long time. And in the organization that I was working, nurse practitioners reported to physicians. And at the time, I was in the doctorate program at Case Western and spending a lot of time with my instructors who were talking about only nursing can really lead nursing. Physicians shouldn't, would nurses lead physicians? It's really, practice specific, discipline specific. And so I relied very heavily on my mentors at Case Western, as well as developing a relationship with my CEO to garner support for this vision that I had, where we would actually, that nurses would actually, as the chief nursing officer, all nurses would report up through me, but also that they would be able to practice to their full scope of practice. And at that time, only physicians, the organizational policy was stricter than the state law. So my work was really around policy change, and the way that I did that was to work with a physician to get this physician to co-lead this initiative with physicians, not with nurses, because we were fine. We wanted to go with it. It was the physicians that needed. We formed a huge task force to be able to examine the current practice, to look at best practices, to understand the scope of practice for nurse practitioners in the state, and then be able to map a process where, yes, they would work with physicians collaboratively on service lines and teams, but that ultimately they would have their own governance structure and that they would report up through the nursing infrastructure. The help that I got was from my university, from Case Western, and from my mentor, who provided me with the understanding and the knowledge that in order to effectively lead nursing, I had to lead all levels of nursing, not just frontline staff. So those are two examples that come to mind.
Hi, Dr. Clavell. This is Amy Crisp.
Amy.
Let's see, where are we? So what is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
Really? One? I can't answer that. I can't answer just one. I can give you a few, but just one? No, I can't. I can't do that. When I again, just completely top of mind. I mean, being able to inspire a shared vision of where we are going and being able to inspire others, I think is an attribute that's critical to being an effective leader. You have to be able to articulate where you're going as an organization and what their role is, and get people excited about following in that direction. So that's certainly key. I think I talked about enabling others to act. And again, these are transformational leadership characteristics. And I've, done a lot of research and published in transformational leadership. I think there's many different styles and very different leadership approaches, but enabling others to act is something that is very empowering as a nurse leader, to be able to create the right circumstances to be able to have others lead is probably the most rewarding thing about being a leader, in my opinion. Also having humility. You don't know everything. You have a lot of experience, but sometimes you don't know the answer. And to be able to be humble and admit that you really don't know, or that you look into something and get back to them, or something that might be out of your control completely, and being candid and honest about that. Those are ways to really build trust with the nursing workforce. And I think, again, building trust is huge. If you're going to commit to something, you got to follow through every time. And if you can't follow through, don't commit. So being able to build trust and to be known as someone who's trustworthy is, I think, just an extraordinary characteristic. And then you've heard me say this multiple times already this evening, building positive relationships with others. It is all about relationships. Every role that I've had, every promotion, every job is all around relationships with others. And honestly, just about all of my roles, I've not intentionally sought them, that others have sought me. And I think that happens when you have relationships with others, that they understand sort of who you are, where you want to go, what you want to do. And they reach out to you with opportunities. And I could name 3 or 4 different opportunities where I never thought that I would ever be able to accomplish what they were asking me to do. Never. And so again, being open to new ideas, right back to the first story that I told, I guess I can do it. I don't know. I guess I'll try to do this. But my experience has been that oftentimes others see things in you that you may not see in yourself. And so being open to that, I think, is also a really great leadership characteristic. I bet you thought I was just going to have like one quick answer for every question and we'd be done in like half an hour.
So Dr. Clavell, we know you kind of already have touched on the next question. So I will ask again, and just in case you have additional information you would like to add. What role do you feel professional organizations play in the success of a leader?
Yes. Well, I think it's critical to be engaged in your local, your state, your regional, your national, and your international organizations. I have always been involved in all of them. I was inducted into Sigma at an early age. I ended up serving on the international board of directors, which was just amazing. But just being able to commit yourself to lifelong learning and growth, and these relationships that you establish through networking, through attending educational conferences, starting to publish, being on editorial boards. I mean, the world is full of possibilities. And one of the ways to have those possibilities open up to you is to get outside of your hometown, to really understand what's happening from a policy perspective, to volunteer, to help out on a committee. It doesn't have to be extensive. I never felt like I never was like, president of my local chapter, but I always was involved and always connected. And I've been to hundreds of professional organizational conferences in my career. And to be able to, it ignites, new concepts and ideas that you can immediately apply. One of the reasons why I'm a DNP is because I love new knowledge and applying it immediately to practice. And that pertains to leadership practice. Also, the relationships that you get, the relationships that you grow, that you develop, stay with you for years. One of the relationships that I had was with the former CEO of the American Nurses Association. Met her at a cocktail reception at Sigma, probably 15 years ago or so. And now she's a key member of my leadership team for the Varin Professional Governance Scale and the work we're doing on nursingpg.com. If you ever want to check out the team that I work with. Tim Porter O'Grady, when I was working in a VHA, gosh, a long time ago, over 20 years ago, he was a tremendous mentor for me for many, many years. And we ended up eventually publishing together, doing work together. And I actually helped write 2 chapters in his new book that's going to be coming out in professional governance. So these relationships that you form early on in your career, they continue to, grow and be sustained. And I would never have had those relationships. I wouldn't have had several career opportunities, job offers, if I hadn't gotten out of my place. I mean, of course, growing up in Vermont, you know that, it's very limited. I did participate in New England oriented activities, but, soon my world was national. And international too. I had the opportunity to be able to present at the International Council of Nurses meeting, both in Barcelona, Spain, and also in Australia. Just great opportunities just by being part of those professional organizations. I think also some of the advocacy work that they do is very, very important. Keeping tabs on legislative issues and concerns around scope of practice is really critical as well. But for me, it was always the relationships, the networking, the publishing, the speaking, the presenting. I had many, many years of traveling and doing that. Pretty critical.
Amazing. Dr. Clavell, who is your most influential leader and why? And this can be in nursing or any profession.
Yeah, at first, what comes to mind, of course, is Florence Nightingale. And I totally loved her being a wellness nurse for so many years and having a master's in health promotion and wellness. Just her whole idea of clean air and the whole airing of things that she used to do was really resonated with me as a nurse. But my most influential leader was Dr. Rosemary Dale, who's the dean of the University of Vermont School of Nursing. College of Nursing and also was the chief nursing officer. The reason why she was most influential is that she, for whatever reason, she identified me early on as someone that she was just going to let go and by let go, I mean, I had a lot of ideas, a ton of energy when I was in my 20s. And the first thing she did was put me in as acting head nurse at 23 years old of a level 1 trauma center. And, most of the nurses there were in their 40s and 50s, and I was 23 years old, and I had never done anything like that before. And she just assigned me to do that. Like that was one of my first experiences with her. But as I worked as a nurse in the emergency department, I became very concerned with all of the patients and families that were coming in from the low-income housing projects and the elderly, the senior centers in the community with preventable issues. I spent many years, probably 20, really being involved in community health and community health improvement. And I got this idea that I wanted to be a community outreach nurse and leave the emergency department and go out in the community and see if I could do some education with families around how to use a thermometer, how to, things that I was seeing in the emergency department. And I wrote up this proposal and brought it to her. I think I was like 24 or something. And she said, fine. And she let me work. First, it was 1 day a week. Then it was 2 days a week. And then I was still a staff nurse. I was still a charge nurse. And they hired a permanent head nurse. I wasn't going to be the permanent head nurse back then is what they called it. But I ended up creating a community outreach health education series back in the early 80s. This was very innovative back then. Now many hospitals have community education and programs. She, allocated funding. I had a marketing department. I had brochures. I created all of the topics. I identified all these volunteer presenters, and it gradually evolved that I ended up developing a corporate wellness program for the entire hospital. There were 5,000 employees for the hospital, so it was pretty good size. And then I created a corporate wellness program, a health promotion program that we marketed to area businesses. And we ended up establishing a downtown wellness center in collaboration with the city of Burlington. I created a Healthy Cities initiative, and I became the director of community health improvement with like 12 staff by the time I was done. And it just started with this seed of wanting to make a difference in the community as an ER nurse. And it ended up being this incredible career where I ended up, being an expert in community benefit, helping not-for-profit hospitals justify tax exempt status by developing community-based programs. And so why did this happen? Because Dr. Rosemary Dale believed in me and was the wind beneath my wings, really. And she also developed a personal relationship with me. She cared about me as a person. We were pregnant at the same time. She shared her maternity clothes with me. And back then, they were like the big bows, the jumpers and stuff. It was really, back in the 80s, the maternity clothes were not really that cute, but she had very nice ones because she was from New York City. So she had very nice quality clothes. But I think it was just those kinds of experiences. I had so much energy and so many ideas when I was young. And I mean, I still do. But having somebody just say, yeah, let's try it. Yeah, that sounds good. Right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and I remember going to her saying, okay, I want to change my title from manager of community outreach to director of community health improvement. And she'd go, yeah, write up the job description. I mean, that's what she was like. So when I think back of it, she got me involved in Sigma. She was I've had a lot of influential mentors, but I think it was just the right point in my career where I was just really taking off and becoming. And I ended up leaving that organization after 20 years and being the head of community health improvement for a regional initiative, VHA in Denver. That's what got me. I'm in Denver now. That's what got me in Denver. And I haven't really been back since. I've been all in the West, and it's Vermont's still home, but yeah, I think it was Dr. Rosemary Dale. Yeah.
Thank you. What advice would you give to aspiring nurse leaders? What tools would you suggest are needed to be successful in the nurse leadership role?
Well, of course, being engaged in your professional organizations, I think, is critical. No question about it. It's very well worth it. Financially, it definitely is a commitment. There's no question about it. But I do think that being engaged is important. I think being committed to lifelong learning and education and growth. I started my own business not too long ago. That back in 2020, right at the start of the pandemic, wonderful time to start a new business. And I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to start a company and the finances and the accounting process, and how do you do an LLC, and how do you do private contractings, and how do you do license agreements with hospitals. But I learned, I figured it out. So my point is, I've been learning my entire career. And so don't stop learning, keep exploring, keep growing, keep learning, find new things, new ways, new approaches. That's important. I think mentors are critical. I think having people that are coaches to you, that care about you as an individual, that want to see you successful, I think that's important. And I think mentoring others is very important. No matter where you are, you have the opportunity to mentor. That's why I like teaching so much at the university, because I feel like I'm mentoring every day. Having, even teaching virtually, having the opportunity to be able to help someone excel, again, that's what really gets me excited. So I think mentoring is really critical. Of course, engaging in new things, taking risks, critical, building positive interprofessional relationships, and just trying to think about what barriers there might be for others for success. I think that's very important as well. And I also think that we have to really focus on equity and diversity in the nursing workforce, and really be mindful of the impact of different cultures and how that really impacts everyone's worldview and how they treat patients, families, and communities. It's just having that insight is so important. And also understanding your own culture and your own background, and how that really can impact how others perceive you, I think, is important as well. And of course, I think publishing. I think everybody should publish. I'm a big writer, and I love to write. I've loved to write ever since I was a kid. I used to publish in the local newspaper. I love writing. But being able to share what you're doing is so interesting to others. And it doesn't really have to be like this earth-shattering research. It can just be a quality improvement initiative, or it can be a model that you developed, like a dedicated education unit, or an academic practice partnership, or it could be anything. But people are hungry to read other stories, and being able to put yourself out there and be able to tell your story is very, very, I think it's very important as a leader. I think it's really a professional obligation to share what you're doing. And it isn't that hard. It's really, there's just a simple recipe that you have to follow, but it's really not that hard. And there's a lot of interest out there and a lot of opportunity. So tools to get there. I mean, there's so many tools, being certified, I think that's critical. I mean, I have lots of certifications. I always strove to achieve them. I think that's critical. Continuing education, I started as an AD nurse, that's kind of where I was at. That's what I could afford back then. And I just, after 3 years, I went on for my BSN, but it took me a long time to get to my doctorate. But I didn't stop. I decided I was going to continue, and it's the best thing I ever did. Being able to participate in continuing education, If you're not going to go back to school, keep learning, keep reading. The evidence is changing every day, and it's going to impact how we care for people. And that's really super important. I think nursing theory, I love nursing theory because it's just a lens that you can interpret different patient situations. And I think understanding theory is super invaluable. I think one of my other mentors, somebody that's meant a lot to me, nursing leader, inspiring nurse leader, is Jean Watson. She's another one that I would say has really impacted my practice. Caring theory is all woven throughout my leadership, and my professional practice model is based on caring theory as well. So anyways, where was I going with that? So just understanding theories and being open to what they're saying and how you can utilize, again, how do you apply that to practice? What's the practical application of that? That's very exciting. And then mentorship, networking, professional organizations, all of that. I think those are all strategies too. Oh, Jean Watson is hosting a nurse leadership conference in Italy. Oh, that sounds really nice, Jacob. Where's that? Where in Italy?
I don't remember the exact location, but I can send it to you if you're interested. I just thought about it once you said
Yeah,
that.
she's pretty great. She is so awesome. I'll never forget. I went to a conference, magnet conference. She was speaking. I was in the front row. And I was sick, actually. I had a really bad, I remember just having this terrible cold. And she was like the first thing morning session. And I remember dragging myself because I really needed to stay in bed at the hotel. Sat in the front row and listened to her, and ran up, had somebody take a picture of me with her. And I used that picture in all of my talks when I got back to my hospital. And I educated all the nurses about caring theory, and we started to weave it into our practice and our professional practice model. It was, again, that was just attending that one session, that one conference. But again, that's where all the ideas come from. And reading. I think that's another big tool. I remember when I was involved in Healthy Cities, just reading, like I traveled a lot. And so I was always reading on the plane. And always I would come home and apply something that I'd read. Always. So there's a lot of tools out there, I think, to really help you be an effective leader. Did somebody just ask a question? Oh, you put it in there. Oh, Amy, thanks. Nice. United in Human Caring. How nice. Yeah, she's just an amazing, inspirational person, isn't she? Incredible.
So Damon, that concludes the questions.
All right. Just want to take a quick moment to see if anybody from our audience has a question for Dr. Clavell. You can either raise the hand or just come off mute and go crazy. She doesn't bite, I promise.
No, not at all. I do have high standards though. Hi.
Hello. Hi, my name is Adele Rabanza, and I work at the VA in Las Vegas with Miss Shika Adams, who extended the invite. So I really appreciate that. And I apologize for what I'm wearing because I'm cooking dinner. So I was like 8 minutes late to the meeting. So
No,
I've really enjoyed listening to you. Wow, I'm new to leadership. I just took a assistant nurse manager role in outpatient surgery clinics. Really didn't see leadership in my future. I'm prior military, and I was kind of thinking what I was going to do my master's degree in. And it's interesting about what you said about relationships, how most of your opportunities presented through those relationships, because that's kind of how this happened. And I guess it was just all the right leaders that I have a lot of respect for extending that invite, and me thinking, wow, I could really do this. Because where I was previously, I was in the emergency department and I worked it all through COVID, and there's a lot of burnout, and I do tend to complain about things I'm really passionate in, but usually I come with a solution and a project. I come from Banner, which has magnet hospitals in Phoenix. So coming to Las Vegas was really shocking. And, but getting into the VA, I was passionate again because I'm with my veterans and I love them. So now in this new role, every day is awesome because I'm learning a million things each day being in leadership. Everything's new to my ears, and a new way of thinking. And so I'm having trouble focusing. And when you were talking about the professional nursing associations, do you recommend picking what I'm most passionate in and going with that? Or were you a part of numerous?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it varied depending on where I was in my career. I was very involved in the Emergency Nurses Association when I was an ER nurse. And then what is it? What is it?
The AAACN, the
Yeah.
triple ACN?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I was involved in that. Oh my, Siri thinks I'm talking to her on my watch. I was involved in. Sure, I understand. The local. By local and state organizations, and of course Sigma. But your specialty area is a really good start. But I think maybe my favorite one is AONL. I think AONL, I still read every publication cover to cover. I read every single article. I mean, I skim some of them, of course, but it really helps me to keep on top of the content. And I also think that annual conference is really excellent for new and aspiring nurse leaders and also seasoned nurse execs. So I would explore AONL, and you should have a state chapter as well, a state group. Here we have a Colorado organization of nurse leaders, so there's probably one in Nevada, I would think.
Okay.
Most states have that, so there's probably a local group, and just get involved and just go and listen and learn. And I think that would be a really good one. They also have a lot of good resources for nurse leaders. They have competencies, they have workshops that they offer. And so it's a really good organization for nurse leaders, aspiring nurse leaders.
Okay.
Nurse leaders.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I did the ENA when I was in the ER, and then I kind of left it. And I actually did just join the AAACN because my leadership recommended it. But yeah, it's just, there's just so much.
Check out AONL.
Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, the national conference might be of interest to you.
Okay.
Yeah, check it out. Thanks for joining tonight.
Thank you for taking the time. It's awesome. I love this stuff.
Good.
Great question, Adele. Anybody have any other questions for Dr. Clavell? She's Pisces. She likes pizza, popcorn. Looks like John said he's having an issue with coming off mute. He's a PhD student. Earlier in discussion, it looks like Dr. Clavell mentioned appropriate staffing and use of tools to get there. How do we do that when the organizations can't agree on what an appropriate staffing model should be?
Yeah, well, that's definitely a problem. And there's probably, when you've seen one staffing model, you've seen one staffing model. It really should depend on the population that you're serving. So, gosh, that's definitely a challenge. I think understanding the world of finance and understanding how budgets are made in terms of direct care hours and indirect care hours, and also looking at national benchmarks like through Action OI, and really understanding what percentile your organization is in or aims to be in. I think all of that knowledge is really super important to sort of level set everyone in talking about staffing ratios. And I'll give you an example. I was in one organization that had, well, their staffing was at 95th percentile, and it was extraordinarily rich. So it's sort of the opposite of maybe what a lot of organizations are going through now. And I was responsible for bringing the staffing down to the 75th percentile, which is certainly very generous still. It's not the 50th, it's not certainly below that. But how you go about doing that You have to have a really strong relationship with senior leadership. For me, it was always working directly with the chief financial officer. And I always had great relationships with the CFO in understanding what are the financial goals. And then he had great respect for me and what are the patient outcome goals? What are the nursing goals? So again, I think that there does need to be a decision made at the senior leadership level about how you're going to do it. And then how do you engage the leaders and the staff in being able to implement that in a consistent way? I'm sure that you have more details though, John. Can you get off mute? Oh, wait, do it again. Click one more time. Yeah, there you go. You're off mute.
All right, I think I figured it out this time. So what I'm more concerned about is I work emergency and trauma. Depending where you look in the country, ER patient ratios can vary for 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 6. And say E&A doesn't even have a clear guidance on what that needs to look like coming out to even make the proposal to someone to say, this is where we should be. Instead, you get a lot of people guessing at what numbers are, or, oh, the hospital across town for me is this, so this is where we should be, when we're seeing 2 to 3 times the number of patients in our emergency department over the course of a year.
Where are you, John? Where are you?
I'm sorry, I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
And so then you're kind of pigeonholed into that, well, this is the perceived staffing model of what the ER should be run at, but it seems like others aren't taking into account the whole picture of, if we're seeing 2 to 3 times as many patients as a smaller institution who is able to run at a lower number and doesn't necessarily have the same number of cycles, the same number of patients boarding and things like that, like the other things that we're trying to overcome that aren't being, say, factored into the consideration of a number by the people I have to be responsible to. I mean, how do we get
do you have an
numbers?
acuity classification system?
I'm sorry?
Do you have an acuity system for your
For
patients?
the ER, yes. Once the patient goes into, like, say, a boarding status or a holding status, no, it all kind of goes out the window, and yet we still have to be responsible for those patients.
Yeah, you probably need something for them. You do need, they need to be included in your acuity model, I think, in terms of your staffing. But, there are national benchmarks for the emergency department, and there's a database called Action OI. Does anybody else know about that? Action OI? Action OI, it's from, I'm trying to remember the name of the company, and I can't right now. It's been a while. I'm trying to remember. Anyways, if you look up Action OI, you should find it. And what they do is they have a national database, and you can compare, and your CFO will know about this, or your director of finance, or if you have a finance director, a finance person for your nursing department. I don't know if you do or not. Some organizations do. Check it out, because they're national benchmarks. And so you can know where you're at in terms of percentile rankings with other emergency departments. So that's one thing that I would say, but also in the ED, it's very complex, right? And depends on your nursing status in terms of how many nurses that you have. And then thinking about, are you using EMTs in your ED? Are you using nursing assistants? Are you using LP? What is your staffing mix? What can you get? And that's going to impact what you do. Because if you can't get enough RNs, you're going to have to figure out a different staffing model to help take care of some of these patients. So I think that there is something that you can do about it. You can, learn more about it, learn more about these national databases, talk with your finance team about it. And because sincerely, what you want to do is develop a model that's going to allow you to take better care of your patients, right? That's what you want. You don't want to feel frustrated that no one's listening or there's no consistency. And also, I don't know what your CNO has to say about this. Seems like there's a little bit more digging that you could do, but it's not insurmountable.
No.
I think you should go and check it out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, and Tirsa was wanting to chime in and ask a question, so that'll.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi. Yeah. So I'm actually in class with Dr. Clavell right now. But so my question is, I recently started a supervisory role within the military market here in Colorado Springs. And I have found as a nurse that I'm always giving to my staff, to my patients. how, as a nursing executive, can you put boundaries that not, I know the buzzword is always kind of the work-life balance, but more so I find that I am always, at work too often and trying to help my staff and take that burden. And if you had any suggestions on how to kind of mitigate that a little bit.
That's a really good question. And there is no such thing as work-life balance, right? These jobs take up a lot of time, a lot of energy. And so it's really the quality of, the time that you have away from work and what you can do to really enhance that. It's not going to be equal. It's just not. It's never going to be equal. So, what can you do for yourself to really carve out that time? Like, for example, when I was a CNO at St. Luke's, I was working 12-hour days. It's pretty busy. I had 3 children at home. It was really busy. Plus, I was in school working on my doctorate. So I was juggling too, a lot of different things. And my strategy for me time or family time or whatever was that I would give 100% of myself during the week at work. I got up really early in the morning with my husband. We go cycling, we go spinning. It was such a nut. I could never do that today, but we got up at 4:44 most days to work out, get the workout in, to get physical, and also gave me time with my husband and alone, away from the kids stuff. And then work all day, come home at 7, eat, whatever. It was just like constant working. And then Saturdays or Sundays was complete school. And I was one of these people that could sit down and work for 8 hours without stopping on school and then just be done. I compartmentalized it. And then one weekend day, I'd do anything I wanted to do. Hang out with the kids. We'd go, do something special. We'd go skiing, whatever. So I just compartmentalized. So really trying to wall off worlds is something that's worked well for me. But make no mistake, these leadership jobs take a lot of your personal time, energy, and attention. And you can get really burnt out. It can really drain you. So at some point you have to just draw a line. I would stop work at 5, and I was always in my office between 5 and 7, 6:45. Everyone would come in. People knew that they could find me there, and I'd try to get all my emails done. When I went home, that was it. I shut it off. I just learned how to compartmentalize and wall stuff off. That worked for me, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. And also, you can't save everything. You can't rescue everything and make everything right. And as nurses, that's really all we ever want to do. We want to cure the patient. We want to dress that wound. We want to, we just want to take care of it. And at some point you have to take care of yourself. And that's one of the things I like about Jean Watson too, is that, thinking about, you can't really care effectively for others. You can't really lead effectively if you don't take care of yourself. So taking time to reflect, what are you doing for yourself that's really meaningful? That's something that really, I've tried to really consciously do, and not always successfully, quite honestly. But, enough so that my daughter is a busy executive. She is a regional VP with Schwab, and she has 2 little kids at home, and she's like a little mini me. She's got all this. So we talk about this a lot, how do you just draw the line and shut it off? And you can learn how to do it. It's hard, and it's not all the time. Sometimes there's that horrible conversation at work with someone or physician or whatever, and you bring it home, it's in your bed, you wake up in the morning and it's there, and it's not always easy, but you can develop this skill.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I've learned too is it's okay sometimes to say no. So if somebody's coming up to you and they're just throwing everything at you, and you want to do your best to help, you have to find those boundaries and learn how to. That's kind of how I've, like Dr. Clavell said, compartmentalized and walled off family time. During my 20 years in the military, it was always family number one. And then it was education, nursing, military, and then everything else was kind of underneath that. But you have to find ways to protect that. So, but I just want to take a minute to thank Dr. Clavell We have gone from baby Dr. Clavell nursing to job with Joanne to school to growing and learning through you and with you. And in this last hour, you've shared yourself, and it's been just such a
It's a
wonderful
privilege.
session with you. And I just want to thank you. So
Yeah, it was such a privilege. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
absolutely,
It's just a joy to be with you. It really is.
absolutely. So
Really wish you all the best in your career and your growth and your journey. And thanks again for the invitation. It was great being with you.
all right. Thanks so much, Dr. Clavell.
All right. Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye. Have a good evening.